I'm so impressed with the resonance of this morning. Just keeps going and going. Good morning. Welcome to Golden Gate Center for Spiritual Living. Every single one of you, happy Sunday after Easter. How are you this morning? Great to see you. Welcome back. For those of you that are new, I'm Reverend Mary Murray Shelton. I'm the community spiritual leader here. And we are a spiritual community that values love, community, integrity, and spiritual growth. We recognize that everyone is an expression of the divine, and all things are that divine expressing. So I believe that we're all here by divine appointment, whether we knew it or not. You may have thought you were on your way to somewhere else, and you found yourself here. That's because you're keeping your appointment. And we're delighted that you're here this morning, whether you're online or you're with us here in the room. So this is your time to say hello to each other. You may or may not have had that opportunity yet, so take a minute now to get up, move around, greet one another, say hi to people that you haven't seen in a while, and introduce yourselves. And if you at home, give yourselves a hug and welcome yourselves to this experience this morning. And we will be right back with you. All right. All right, I invite you to come on back and take your seats for just a moment as we prepare for the opening song. Now this morning, once again, we're blessed to have live music. Josh Holmes is here with us today, along with Benny and Amanda, and they are going to be leading us in our opening and closing. Josh has been a New Thought for a long time. He used to work as events manager at Unity, and now he's Sue Ruta's assistant, so he was one of the people that did a lot of work on putting the 40th anniversary celebration together, so we want to acknowledge that as well. So, please stand, and Josh will lead us through the morning opening song.
I believe we're going to have the lyrics up here. We're going to all say yes. Okay.
Open, open, my heart is open, and I say yes to this moment in time. This moment, open, open, eyes are open. We say yes to the truth that we find. Open, open, our minds are open. We say yes to the love inside. The light coming through me. Open, open, my arms are open, and I say yes to the love in this place. Open, open, our arms are open, and we say yes to amazing. You may be seated. Very nice. Thank you, everybody. So this is a time that we're beginning to turn within now. So we've greeted each other. We've made ourselves present in the room by singing together and joining our voices. And now we're going to turn within together and go into that inner place of oneness. And our morning opening is going to be done by our prayer practitioner, Lori Greer.
So taking a breath together, let's settle ourselves into this moment. And as I turn within, I become aware of that presence that lives in me at the very center of my being. This is the place of peace. It is the place of power. It is the place I return to remember there is only one life. It is the infinite life of God. And in this infinite, there is every good thing available. There is power, peace, joy, love, connection, beauty. And I am reminded of all that it gives into its creation. Everything that we see, touch, feel, and know, every experience, every relationship, every conversation and connection, it is all God. And so knowing this, I know I'm a part of that goodness. I'm a part of that greatness. I'm a part of that infinite intelligence, that divine inspiration and creativity. I am a part of the infinite prosperous flow of money, of joy, of love. And as I'm a part of this, I know that each and every one is also a part of this wholeness and perfection. And so knowing that we are God in form, God expressing, God revealing more of itself, I claim and accept for us this opening, an opening to a greater idea, a greater knowing, a greater awakening, the light of illumination shining forth to reveal to us exactly the information we need in each moment to choose more joy, to choose more prosperity, to choose more love, to choose more divine connection with each other and with God. And so in this opening and in this acceptance, we align in consciousness with the truth of our being, that we are more than we can imagine when we let go of everything outside of ourselves. And so I claim this awareness now for each and every one to tap into that divinity, to allow it to be revealed, to allow it to unfold, to let go of doing, and just be, to accept that being is enough. And so I give thanks for this message this morning, for this energy and the vibration of what is already coming forth in this service. I give thanks for every voice, for every touch of every hand, and for all that is given in this moment. And I give thanks for the demonstration of this prayer, for the revelation, for the manifestation of that greater good, for the highest and best for each and for all. And so I release this word now into the creative process, the law that takes it and makes it so. I let it be, and so it is.
Are we having the best life ever? How does it feel to know you're calling? What does it take to better life? What's the good knowing all the secrets when there's so much suffering outside my door? If I could see the light, just give them what they need. Maybe they could be alright. Somehow I could change the world. How can I manifest my tomorrow? My hands to create better life. I wanna live my life without regret, so I promise now to make it so. If I can see the light within connect humanity to change our world. Alright. So how are we gonna do that? How am I gonna do that? Think about it for a second. Think about it. Okay, alright. I'll bring my best self. I'll bring my whole heart. I'll give it to you. I'll give my connecting you and me to change the
Yes, Josh is living our theme for the year. Live out loud. No shy stuff going on there. This is our actual month of our 40th anniversary. And so the theme for this month is There's No Place Like Home. We wanted this to be a place, especially this month, and last week we had a lot of that, of homecoming. People coming back that have been away for a long time or that grew up here and went off into their lives, and welcoming folks back. But even if it's your first time here, welcome home. I remember years ago when I lived in San Francisco, there was, down in the Marina District, there was an Italian restaurant called La Pantera, and everything was served family style. And the woman who owned the restaurant was this little tiny Italian woman. And you sat at tables with people you didn't know, and you had a little green bottle of red wine, God knows what it was, right in front of you there. And we just passed things. There was no menu. You came in, you had what was going to be there that night. And she would go around to all the tables and say to you as you're sitting there having your meal, welcome home. And I never forgot that. It was so touching to me to be welcomed in that way, even though I'd never been there before. So we want to say to you, whoever you are, wherever you may be on your path of faith, you're welcome here. And we're glad that you're with us today, all of you. Old timers, I don't mean age-wise, I mean old-time GGCSLers and so on. You're all welcome here. So this morning we're talking about bringing our history alive. And you can see the altar here is covered with photographs. These are photographs of Randy and Karen's family and family members and ancestors. And you especially want to see this sketchbook, which was done by Randy's aunt, and the detail in the sketches, they're like pencil sketches, is incredible. What this is to me, every one of these photographs is a story. There's something connected to it, who they are and what they were all about in their lives, whether they're young or old or in between. And really, our stories are what our life is all about. So bringing our history alive has to do with our stories. Now, most of our stories, especially when we're beginning in life, have to do with family stories that we're told by our parents and other relatives about ourselves or our siblings or them or their brothers and sisters and so on. They're all stories. So this woman tells a story about her mother, and she says, my mother was in the bathroom putting on her makeup under the watchful eyes of her young granddaughter, as she'd done many times before, and after she applied her lipstick and started to leave the bathroom, the little one said to her, Grandma, you forgot to kiss the toilet paper goodbye. Now, that's a story that lives on in their family. This little girl undoubtedly is grown, because this story was from way back. But this story survives. Not only does it survive in their family, it survives every place that anybody heard this story, and it goes on. I think about my nephew, who's only 6 years younger than I am. When he was about 2 years old, we were at a cousin's house, and there was a swimming pool there, and he was running around. And people kept saying to him, Stephen, don't run, because you'll slip. You might fall in the pool. But he wouldn't stop, and he fell in the pool. And so my brother quickly jumped in the pool to get him and got him out of the water. And my little nephew, who had a very deep voice, even at a young age, said, I held my breath, Dad. Was that the right thing to do? Now, that's a story that lives on in our family, even though my nephew is now, 63 years old. So it's these little things. My niece, who's 7.5 years younger than I am, when she was tiny, we're all at the house together, and she was in one of those little high chair things that you hook onto the table. I don't even see them anymore now, but it sits, hooked onto the table with a little thing underneath it, and she was scooted right up to the table. We're all sitting around, we're having corn on the cob and other summertime, treats. And she was really liking the corn on the cob. She was sitting next to her grandmother. And at one point in the meal, she just leaned over and put her head on her grandmother's shoulder, and we all went, "Aw." And then she took her grandmother's corn on the cob, sat back up, and started eating it. And that's been a story that gets passed down in the family. So when we talk to other people, when we introduce ourselves to them, when we talk to people that we know, what we talk about is stories. What have you been doing? What movies have you seen? Did you see that address in Congress? Whatever it might have been. We're talking stories all the time. We're geared for stories, and they give our lives shape. It's our memory of those stories and the stories we selectively remember that give our lives the shape. So this is also true with us as a community, and it's true in a larger sense as well. Napoleon Bonaparte said, "History is a set of lies agreed upon." And Winston Churchill said, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." And so one of the things to be aware of with history is that it is stories. And the stories have both context and content. It's necessary to have both of those things for a story. So the content is what is in the story. So that might be the stories themselves. It could be art about the time. It could be jokes that are told. It could be commentary that's made on what's going on. But it's all stories. If you watch the news, how many of you in here ever watch the news? It's all stories, right? It's all stories. Now, what's important about that is the context as much as the content. So the content gives us what's contained. But what we don't always see within what's contained is the context. So the context has to do with the choice of which stories get told. That begins to shape things right away. And what is the interpretation we give to that story? Is this a funny story? Is it a scary story? Is it a sad story? Is it an outrageous, angering type of story? So the way that we interpret the story also gives it its color and shape and feeling, regardless of the joke or the art or the story being told. And then it's important that we understand who is the audience the story is intended for, and what is the purpose of that particular story at that time. So for example, if we look at the four Gospels, which were all written long after the death of Jesus, like between 35 and 75 years after he died, Mark was an uneducated Jewish man who spoke Aramaic, and his is the only gospel that has Aramaic phrases in it that are then translated. So he was speaking to other Aramaic-speaking Jews at that time, and he was telling the story. Mark does not have a nativity story at the beginning. It's the shortest of the Gospels. And then we have Matthew, and Matthew is an educated man who is speaking to a larger audience of people who are rabbis or more educated individuals. And he has a nativity story, and he has a crucifixion story, because all of the educated people at that time would know all of the birth stories in the cultures that had to do with great leaders, great spiritual leaders, all had some sort of mystical story around their birth. So does Jesus, and some sort of mystical story around their death, and so does Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. Then we have Luke, who was not Jewish and never met Jesus. Everything that Luke learned was from listening to St. Paul. So he was writing down the stories that he heard around the disciples and with St. Paul. And he was a Greek doctor, and he was writing for the Gentiles, for those non-Jewish people who were learning the stories. Luke also has a nativity story. It's a little bit different. And he also has a death story that's a little bit different, right? And then we have John. And John was the one who wrote last. And at the time that John wrote, the Christians were being persecuted and killed horrifically. So he was writing to the Christians, both the Jews and the converts, to this teaching, who he wanted to shore up in their courage. They were the audience, and that was the purpose. And so he's the one that says things like, that Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. No one comes to the Father but through me. He was trying to encourage them to be strong in their faith, not to collapse in the midst of the persecution. So he chose to tell different stories in different ways than any of the other Gospels. The first three are called the Synoptic Gospels because they're associated with another writing that disappeared, or there's an assumption of it. And these Gospels then are all a little different. I had a Jewish instructor when I was an acting student in San Francisco at ACT who said he had once taken a class in comparative religions, and in the Christian section, he started reading the Gospels, and then quite quickly he decided, oh, no sweat, it's the same story 4 times. He said, it never occurred to me that what was important about the 4 Gospels was where they were different from each other. So when he got to the test, of course, So when we look at the stories, it's like, what is important about the stories that we're telling? Joan Didion said, we are the stories that we tell. So in 1893 was the first Parliament of World Religions in Chicago. There was not another one for 100 years. So in 1993, the World Parliament of Religions began to convene again, once again in Chicago. And at that parliament, there were people from religious science who attended. There were people from Unity who attended. And we as an organization have become much more involved in this, which is now, I think, annual Parliament of World Religions. And this year, there will be a whole set of speakers from New Thought traditions who are participating. So the visibility of the larger organization, that community in the world, is expanding. So in 1993, 10 years into our existence as a center, I did, whoops. What did I just do? Oh, that's fine. Okay. We'll go back to that one. In 1993, I did share about 1983 a couple weeks ago, so now I want to share about 1993. In 1993, some of the movies that came out that year were Jurassic Park, Mrs. Doubtfire, The Fugitive, The Pelican Brief, Schindler's List, Sleepless in Seattle, Hocus Pocus, Gettysburg, and Groundhog Day. Now, in Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams improvised so much that there were PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17 edits of the film, just because of Robin. Some of the books that were out included Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban and the Celestine Prophecy. Some of the favorite TV shows were Seinfeld, Frasier, Murphy Brown, Murder, She Wrote, and the Cheers finale happened in 1993 on May 20th, and 42.4 million households watched it. One of the number 1 songs that year is I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. In January of that year, the European Union was created. Bill Clinton was inaugurated as 42nd President of the United States. Václav Havel was elected President of the Czech Republic. In February, the standoff in Waco, Texas began, which did not end for 51 days and ended in April in a fire. 76 people died, including David Koresh. In February of that year, there was an underground parking garage bomb at the World Trade Center. Killed 6 and injured over 1,000 people. In March, Janet Reno became the first female Attorney General, and Rodney King testified at the federal trial of 4 police officers who were accused of beating and kicking him. In June, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed to the Supreme Court. In October, River Phoenix died due to drug-induced heart failure outside a West Hollywood nightclub. And in December, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Endeavour to repair an optical flaw in the Hubble Space Telescope. Don Amici died that year. So did Federico Fellini and Frank Zappa and Arthur Ashe and Dizzy Gillespie, Audrey Hepburn and Cesar Chavez. Got Milk was a big commercial. The Truth Is Out There. Anybody ever watch The X-Files? That was another one. A first-class stamp, 29 cents. Women, until that year, were forbidden to wear pants on the floor of Congress. And that year was the first time that 2 women represented a state in the Senate, and that was California, with Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein. So that's what was going on in the world in 1993. A little bit more of our own history here. These were sent in by Kathy Fowler and Diana Smith. Kathy Fowler said, here are some remembrance about our years at GGCSL, which was the Golden Gate Church of Religious Science when we joined it in 1986. She said, I said to Skip, there's more to life than, and he finished my sentence with news, weather, and sports. On Easter, we walked down the hill in Corte Madera with my mom, Rip, age 9, Sarah, age 6, and Scotty, age 3. It felt like coming home. I remember thinking, wow, there's a whole church that believes what I believe. Reverend Jim Munson's sermons were so clear and inspiring, and Reverend Marcia Sutton and Lloyd Strom were powerful intellects. Reverend Carroll put an earth-based spin on things. I went to Woman's Spirit every year and still attend Sister Spirit. And then she says, I did weekly floral arrangements for the church until we switched to altars. And as my mother's dementia progressed, she was still made to feel welcome. Persia Mateen thanked her for singing along with her solos. It was wonderful to have the children's program. Christy and Jerry Karate did a masterful job. As a young teen, Rip took a bus on his own after a sleepover at my brother's house in Fairfax just to get to church. Teen camp was especially great. I was an advisor several times. My kids each got a firm footing in being a spiritual person. Rip went through some difficulty in his early 20s, but changed his life. I asked him how he did it. He said, I just use science of mind principles. As an adult, Sarah took foundations and other classes, and Scotty and his family still attend CSL in Del Mar. What those stories tell me is that what Golden Gate gave and provided to this one family is replicated and duplicated in so many families that have been here and is carried forward in the lives of their kids and their grandkids. So 40 years has not been the same thing all the time for 40 years. It's been something that morphed and grew and influenced and was carried out into other aspects of life in other places, that the people that learned in science of mind classes or in youth group or youth camp, what they learned, they took with them. And whether or not they still attend, it influences their lives. Those stories that they learned assist them today in living their lives. So we are the stories we tell ourselves. And this is true whether the stories we tell are the stories of a life or a people or a country or a community like ours. Peter Berger said, the past is malleable and flexible, changing as our recollection interprets and re-explains what has happened. You know, sometimes we go back and we look at our history and we reinterpret it in the light of more information. I just read an article this morning, a real short article about one of the people who helped develop Friends, the television show Friends, and they had been criticized for not having more diversity in the show and more people of color. And she had always felt a little defensive about that. And then in recent years, she got it. And now she said, I'm looking forward to creating some other kind of series where I can really do justice to the diversity that I didn't understand was so needed then. So we reinterpret our past sometimes. We take down old monuments that we decide no longer really represent us. We put up new ones that represent us more at the present time. And whenever we do that, we think those things are going to last forever. You know, that this is it. We finally have made the statement. But the truth is, nothing is forever. Those statements are all open to reinterpretation and to looking at them again and reevaluating them. John Adams, one of the founders of this country, said, "You will never know how much it costs the present generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you make good use of it." Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, "We are surrounded by a mind or intelligence that knows everything. The potential knowledge of all things exists in this mind. The abstract essence of beauty, truth, and wisdom coexist in the mind of the universe, and we also exist in it and may draw from it. But what we draw from it, we draw through the channel of our minds." So we often say in Science of Mind, we don't teach that you can have anything. We teach that you can have what you can embody in consciousness, what you can anchor yourself in, what you can expand your belief into, what you essentially become in consciousness, that you can have. And so we are the stories that we tell ourselves. The events are the content, the meaning is the context, and we live on the stories, the myths, the ideas that are wrapped up in meaning and given to us. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "We're not makers of history, we are made by history." And William James, a philosopher, said, "The world we see that seems so insane is the result of a belief system that is not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system, to let the past slip away, expand our sense of now, and dissolve the fear in our minds." I really think that one of our, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, that statement. I think that that is a wonderful, all-inclusive statement about humanity and our lives. The only thing that's really the problem, ultimately, is fear. Everything we do to push each other away and separate ourselves is about fear. I don't understand you. You're very different from me. You have different beliefs, different food, different clothing, different opinions, different education, different ethnicity. You must be wrong. Or I must be wrong, and I know I'm not wrong. Rather than, isn't that interesting that we have all of those differences? How about we be curious about each other rather than condemning what we don't agree on? It seems to be a human quality that we find the places that things are different and we scare ourselves about them. And we tell each other stories that scare us more instead of the stories we want to hear, which encourage and inspire and uplift us and change our minds about those things. Because those stories are out there, we just don't come across them very often. Because we are fascinated by tragedies and disasters. I'm not sure why, but we are fascinated by them. You can't look away from a train wreck. I heard a story this morning about when steam engines were being decommissioned. This fellow decided that one way to make some money for the company was to advertise that you could watch these two steam engines make their final journey, and that would be the end. They were never going to be used again. But to make it more enticing, what he did and what he said he was going to do was he was going to have these two trains crash into each other. And so they faced in opposite directions on the same track. And they smashed each other. And people paid tons to come and see that. Some of them got injured for flying shrapnel. But everybody wanted to see these steam engines collide. What an amazing thing, you know? Was life just dull and they needed something exciting? I don't know. But they went because we're fascinated by that stuff. So, Deepak Chopra says, when we live our lives with an appreciation of everyday miracles and their meanings, we connect with the underlying field of infinite possibilities. When we live our lives with an appreciation of everyday miracles and their meanings, you have to know the story of a miracle to decide what it means for you. And that's what we have to do with everything in our lives. We have to know the story and then decide what it means. Now, how do we make a decision then that makes the story more empowering rather than less empowering? How do we take a story about something negative that happened in our lives and find a meaning for it that actually gives us grace or gives us strength or gives us some gift that we need? Because it really is up to us to decide what that event or story really means. Now, we may have carried forward for many years our PTSD or whatever it is around that particular story. And it may take some time to unravel those effects. But part of what helps us unravel them is to reframe them and find a new way of looking at them and considering what they were there for on a positive side. Even if it's hard to believe there could be anything. What could it have been? Where is the blessing in that? How does it forward me and lift me up? If we look for those, then we begin to see new things. It's just like Reverend Dr. Glenn Wood, who was the dean of the School of Ministry up in Seattle when I was there, used to say, when you believe more in what you don't see than what you do see, what you do see you won't see, and what you don't see you will see. You see? The Talmud says we don't see things the way they are. We see them the way we are. So our belief about what has happened then shapes what happens next or what can happen next. Because whatever our interpretation is, it also builds boundaries around that story. And unless we take the boundaries down and create something new in our interpretation, that story will stand as having the meaning that we gave to it. Does this make sense? Yeah? So I want to share a story with you about ancestors and beliefs and how a changed experience caused a reinterpretation of an old family belief. And this story comes from 1993, in fact. When I came to the farm as a bride, the rock was there, just around the corner of the house. It was an ugly, dull orange, about a foot in diameter, and stuck up a couple inches through the back lawn, waiting to trip me. Can't we dig it out? I asked after I hit it full speed with the lawnmower, breaking the blade. No, it's always been there, my husband said, and his father agreed. It goes down pretty deep, I reckon, my father-in-law added. My wife's family's lived here since the Civil War. No one's ever got it out. So it stayed. My children were born, grew up, went away. My father-in-law died. Sometime later, my husband died. After the mourning, there was the coping. And with it, a sharpened awareness of my surroundings, because I could change them more easily than I could change my life situation. Now I began to see the yard around me the way a woman sees her house when company comes unexpectedly. I saw 100 little sore spots, and I began to heal them, one at a time. The spot at the southwest corner of the house, however, was never going to look nice. Not with that rock protecting weeds and crabgrass to form a scab on the green. I went to the shed and got my shovel. I was going to dig out the rock. I braced myself for what was to be a long day, perhaps experienced by previous generations who had tried to dislodge the rock. So I put on heavy shoes, I rolled out my wheelbarrow. If it took the whole day, that rock was going to come out. 5 minutes later, the rock was out. It had been about a foot deep and maybe 6 inches wider than it looked from the top. I pried it loose with a crowbar and hoisted it into the wheelbarrow. I was stunned. That rock had persisted there beyond living memory. Each family had taken it on faith that the previous generation had tried and failed to remove it. Because the rock had appeared to be large and deep, it was treated as immovable and strong. I've seen people do this too and get others to walk carefully around them and assume a depth of character and knowledge solely from demeanor rather than from actual accomplishment. The orange rock had earned my respect. I couldn't just dump it behind the barn. So I wheeled it over to the shed, still within sight of the house, and it rests there with vinca growing around it. I still see the rock every day, but now as something good in my little landscape. It's a reminder that each generation ought to find things out for itself. So we too have been around as a community for 40 years, but the future is unwritten. How do we interpret our past and our spiritual ancestors in this community in such a way that it becomes a springboard to go forward from into our future? How do we envision the truth of the future for ourselves now, standing on the history that went before and calling it good and very good? Well, we'll find out together. Namaste. Thank you. And so the question is, what is your story? Well, we're going to take it into prayer right now. So I invite you to turn within. There is one. This one is infinite, present everywhere, always, in all of its fullness in every spot. It is eternal. It is filled with every possibility and power. It creates by becoming all that is in form, including each one of us, individualized, and given the freedom to express, learn, discover, create for ourselves. We are so blessed to know that right where we are, in the very seat or place you're standing, there is nothing there but God. All around us in this place. And everywhere in our stories, everywhere in our history, everywhere in our lives, there is nothing of substance but the one. Therefore, all of the stories, all of the presents shine with holiness, whether we understand their interpretation or not. So this day, we open our hearts to our ancestors, to our personal history, to our community history, and we stand on those shoulders, taking all of the wholeness of empowering good that they can muster and going forward into a life of even more wonder, joy, and greatness. So we anchor this in our awareness and in our memory, so that moment by moment today and throughout our week, we can remember this and be grateful. Right now, we release this prayer into that creative law of mind and spirit, which always and only says yes. We let the prayer go where the work is being done now. We let it be. And together we say, and so it is. Please stand and join me for the morning's affirmation. Together, I welcome opportunities to grow closer to Spirit. Every day offers me new glimpses of the divine. My history has taught me to value this deep connection more and more. That history lives today as it guides me in a fulfilling, meaningful life, and so it is. You may be seated. And I will invite our ushers to come forward. This is our sacred giving time. If you would like to text a donation, you can do that to the number on the screen, or use PayPal or Venmo. All the listings are in your bulletin this morning, so you can see exactly how to do it. And some of you I know give on automatic pledge or automatic donation. Thank you. We want to bless those offerings. Am I still on? Yes? Okay. No, you don't have to turn it up for me. I just want to make sure I'm okay with you guys. So, right now, we're going to bless the offering that we're giving this morning, all of us together, recognizing that all the gifts bless us and the larger community and world. So hold your gift near your heart if you're giving it today, or with your loved one if you're here together and giving it together, as we say this. This gift I give is God in action. I now send it forth to bless and to prosper. I know that everywhere it goes, it is creating a world living in love, one heart and one thought at a time. And so it is. Let's go ahead. Josh.
What do you do when you've done all you can? And it seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when your friends turn away? You're alone. Tell me, what do you give when you've given your all, and it seems like you can't make it through? You just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand watching God see you through. After you've done all you can, you just stand. Tell me, how do you handle the stains of your past? Tell me, how do you deal with the rain? And how can you smile when your heart has been broken and filled with pain? Tell me, what do you give when you've given your all, yeah, and it seems like you can't make? You just stand when there's nothing left to do. You just stand watching God see you through. Yes, after you've done all you can, you just stand. and be sure, be not entangled with that bondage again. You just stand and endure, 'cause God has a purpose. Yes, God has a plan. Tell me, what do you do when you've done all you can, and it seems like you can't make it through? You just stand, stand, you stand, and don't you dare give up. Through the storm and through the rain, through all of your hurt, and get through all your pain. And don't you bow, and don't you bow. No, you don't give up, and you don't give in. You hold on and be strong, because the God is coming in. No, it won't be too long. After you've done all you can, after you've done all you can, after you've done all you can, you just stand. You stand.
Thank you, Josh. All right. And so we do, all of us together, accept this offering on behalf of Golden Gate. We do that knowing and declaring that as we send this out into the world to do its work, that everywhere it goes, it helps people connect with more love and less fear to make a new story in our world. And so it is. All right. Now, if you happen to be here with us for the very first time this morning, I want to draw your attention to the table at the back here, behind the chairs. And you're going to find all kinds of information you're welcome to take on that table, and also welcome packets. Inside the welcome packet, there's a blue card. If you fill it out and turn it into Galen, who's holding this stuff up in the back right now, you can see her there. Turn it into her. She's going to give you a little book as a gift. And that is our thank you for being here today, and also our invitation to you to come back and be with us often. We look forward to getting to know you. We want to thank everyone who participated this morning in putting the service together, especially Josh and Benny and Amanda, who are doing the music today, and the Frost family for this wonderful altar. Make sure you come up and take a look at this, and Randy and Karen can tell you who these people are. The old radio is here. Karen's grandmother's birthday book, where she kept a record of everybody's birthday. This little book is up here, and the drawings from Randy's aunt is quite amazing. So make sure that you see that. So let's thank everybody, and especially also our 40th anniversary team, who did such a spectacular job last weekend. Let's thank them all. We are giving one more week an opportunity for people to sign up for Foundations class. It did start on Tuesday. The second class will be this Tuesday night. So you must act quickly if you want to participate this year in this class. And it's from 6 to 9 on Zoom, so you don't have to do any traveling. You can sign up on our website, or you can, well, actually, I don't know if the sign-up sheet is back there anymore. Sorry? Oh, it is, okay. So you can sign up this morning back there, and we'll be sure and take that sign-up sheet so we know that you want to participate, and we can get to you and get you the info you need. Also today, you want to come up, Marilyn, and say something about Quick Start? Marilyn Letsos, come on up here, hon, so the camera can see you. One of our prayer practitioners is going to be teaching Quick Start today.
And
Wait. No, it looks like you're on. Okay. Can we have microphone here? Microphone?
Thank you. I just, this review, this introduction, this heart of science of mind, of our philosophy, is presented in an interesting and entertaining way in this class, in this
Workshop.
Yeah. And I just want to say personally, every time I ever review this material, I get a deeper sense and a more immediate sense of how it works. And so even if, and I've been in this philosophy probably 30 years now. And so I'm just inviting anyone who wants to kind of dwell in the heart of our philosophy, come on, just let me know, talk to me after service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. Yeah. So that's today from 12:30 to 2:30 on Zoom. And next week in this room, Barbara Cox, another one of our licensed practitioners, and I will be doing a 2-hour free workshop. And it is from noon to 2. There will be some food here for people that are staying for the workshop. Conscious aging workshop on considering the second half of life. How do you want the second half of life, or however much of it you've got still, how do you want it to look, feel? What do you want to leave behind? How do you want to shape what you're doing? How do you want to shape your legacy, what you're leaving for future generations? So we encourage you to come and participate with us next week. And also, because we're doing that next week, we want to invite you to bring pictures of your kids and grandkids for the altar. So the altar next week will kind of reflect our legacy a little bit, okay? Those that have come before us, or after us in this case. Also, how many of you sing in secret? In the shower, in the car, when no one else is around, dancing around your living room when you're vacuuming? Don't be shy, okay? So Bruce Stagbrook, our newest Leadership Council member, is starting a choir. And they are rehearsing here at 9 o'clock Sunday mornings. Talk to Bruce. Bruce, would you stand up and turn around so they know who you are? Talk to Bruce if you're interested. I hear they had a great rehearsal this morning. So have a conversation with Bruce, and we'll see where that will lead us. The last thing I want to tell you is, of course, we have Wednesday night meditation at 7:15 on Zoom each week. This week it's going to be visioning. So even if you've never done visioning before, you're welcome to come and participate on Zoom. Just bring a paper and pen with you for that. And you can find the link for that on our website calendar under the Classes and Events tab. We want you to know there are lots of ways you can get prayer. You can go to the website under Resources and request prayer. You can put a prayer request in the box. But one of the most powerful things is to sit with a practitioner, to talk with them and let them do that prayer for you right there while you're there. We offer this on Sunday morning. So we have Selma, who is one of our licensed practitioners, and we have Karen, who is just on the verge of being licensed over here. She's been well trained. And as you know, what we do with our practitioner students at the end of the second year is we start them at the prayer table. And so Karen is ready this morning to do prayer for you also. So don't leave with a heavy heart. Make sure you get a prayer before you go. It's a wonderful way to send you off into your week. So please join me now for the closing blessing, and then we'll go into the closing song. We speak this blessing together. I now walk, so that whoever walks beside me dwells in the presence of God, and whoever places a hand in mine is lifted, and whoever thinks of me is illumined with God consciousness, for spirit and I and all people are one eternally, and so it is. And here's our closing song by Ricky Byers, Blessed Always.
You know this one. Blessed always.